Hello and welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin and our esteemed president, the great uniter. Basically, he had a speech earlier in the week claiming that white supremacy is our nation's greatest terrorist threat, and that was mirrored by Mayorkas, who also stated the same thing. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is him campaigning
Thank you
basically.
very much.
He said, he was going to be the great uniter. He's done nothing but divide and attack. The fact of the matter is the statistics do not support that
Not even
claim.
close.
In fact, it's I believe the stat was something about 4% of violent attacks were from white supremacists. All the other gun violence in the country has been different groups, different black on black, black on Asian, white on white. Almost none of it has anything to do with white supremacy,
Then
but
why do they do this? Because is
they
it a dog whistle against the so-called MAGA Republicans? I say yes.
I think it has less to do with the MAGA Republicans than the fact that blacks are leaving the Democratic Party. He Biden has a 51% approval rating among African Americans. When he was elected, that approval rating was, I believe, 83%. The Democrats need to carry at least 70% of the African American vote to win the presidential election. So he has to convince them that white supremacists are after them and that the Republicans are going to support the white supremacists.
I agree with that, but there's also I think this Ted Cruz said something very interesting as Biden increasingly falls into a state of dementia. He basically said that the White House is now controlled by a bunch of 25-year-old Marxists. I think that has something to do with it as well.
That has something to do with it as well. I also think let's not forget that Joe Biden was buddy buddy with the head, what was it, the Grand Dragon of the KKK.
Robert
I
Byrd.
Yes, I think a lot of this is that he's always been a racist, and now, it's the old saying, "Methinks he doth protest too much."
Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. It's like the guy who says, let's go after those gays, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he's probably the one who has his own issues. I
E-
agree with that. And actually,
Exactly.
Mr. Biden actually said that he was actually very proud of the fact that he came from an ex slave state, but that was the old Joe Biden.
That was
Um,
the old Joe Biden. But I think it goes along the lines, and we've seen this time after time. Everything the Democrats accuse the Republicans of is something the Democrats are doing. So, racist Joe Biden is trying to attack racism, and it's got nothing to do with reality anymore. It's all spin.
well, does he have anything to do with reality? That's a
No,
rhetorical
I
question, by the way. Thank you very much. But why is this? Last week, it was an ABC News poll. It wasn't like Billy Bob's news service had Biden up by 7, and others up by 6, I believe. Okay, why is it now reversed that Trump is now behind by 7 and DeSantis behind by maybe less, but
yeah,
not really?
there's some hinky stuff going on with the poll numbers.
Now, can
There
I just
now,
interject? Can I ask a question? Because I'm thinking about this while I was saying this. ABC is a very reliable, reputable, polling place, news agency, I guess. Could it be that that's maybe planted as a reaction to that figure?
it wouldn't surprise me. I think we talked about this on last week's podcast. Time Magazine, after that poll came out, did an entire article about how that poll was absolutely missing the point. It was absolutely wrong. I've heard a number of mainstream media outlets go, "No, that's an outlier. It can't possibly be true."
What is your view? If you were
Honestly,
going to guess who's up and who's down. Biden, Trump. My guess
I
would be Trump up by 3 at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think, quite frankly, all of these polls are wrong
Arlocken.
to a certain, to a certain extent. I do believe the ABC News poll was a canary in the coal mine. They probably actually reached out to conservatives or Republicans, which most of these polling companies do not actually have a representative, statistically viable population of conservatives and independents. They all tend to swing liberal. So I think this was that canary in the coal mine, as I said. Could it be wrong on purpose to try to scare Democrats into coming together? Wouldn't surprise me for Disney to do something like that. Disney owns ABC. But I have a feeling, based on the shock that George Stephanopoulos showed when he was reporting the results, that this was an accurate poll.
Great analysis. I agree. Um, Interesting. Speaking of polls, RFK Jr. now at 20%. Of course, there'll be no debate. I love this. He's being basically gaslighted by the mainstream media. He said the Democratic Party is now the party of war and is no longer supportive of the middle class. That's pretty bold. That's not going to get you on CBS Good Morning, is it?
No, but he's not saying anything that hasn't been said over and over again. He's
But not by a
absolutely
Democrat.
no, but not by a Democrat. Yes, it's been said by independents, it's certainly been said by Republicans, but he is absolutely right. And it is time that the Democratic populace realize that their party is no longer representing them. And it's not just the party, it's the left as a whole. We've talked a lot about Disney and how they went woke and they're fighting for woke values and the left. Well, right now, there's a writer's strike going on. Now, the left and unions usually go hand in hand. The union has supported the left, but now we're seeing the left is not supporting the unions. And Disney literally came out with their new fall lineup just a few days ago that is completely unscripted, so they don't have to use unionized writers at all. So I mean, they're starting
But I thought
to
they were
flip.
woke. What's going on here?
Exactly.
What
They're
happened?
woke as long as it doesn't affect them.
And
You
the
know, it's
bottom
the
line,
same
there you
thing
go.
we've
Isn't it
right.
something we've
We've
been
said this
saying on this
about liberals
podcast?
all the time.
Isn't it something we've been saying on this podcast all the time with socialists and uber Democrats? It's always do as I say, not as I do. A la
Exactly.
Bernie
And
Sanders.
that yeah, who's made a fortune thanks to capitalism on his new book that rails against capitalism.
Only
So
in America. And speaking of Bernie, who I think is one of the most despicable political characters for various reasons, was promoting an increase in the minimum wage. I know, Bernie, you've never worked in the private sector your entire life, okay? You've been living on the public dole forever. We're already in a hyperinflationary situation. I don't think that's really a good idea, Dr. Lopkin.
no, certainly with what's been going on with inflation and the job market, it's a bad time to be raising the minimum wage. But more importantly, the national minimum wage should be abolished. Minimum wage should be done at the state
Of
level
course, because different
because
levels, standards of living, and cost of living,
exactly,
yes.
if you have a $15 minimum wage, you are barely making ends meet in New York City, but you are doing very well in Alabama or Arkansas or Oklahoma. So the idea of a national minimum wage is ridiculous.
But isn't it
And
really him losing the spotlight or fading a little bit? And what he says, I don't think he even gives a shit if it's sound policy. It's just another, all he's done for the last 30 years, top 1%. Even the New York Times were aghast because he had nothing behind it. There's nothing behind the mask. He's a
No,
bullshit artist.
he is an empty bag. There is nothing to him. And now I think the reason that he's so quiet, two things. First of all, if you remember, he kept going after
Oh,
millionaires
hello.
and billionaires, and then he became a millionaire.
No, no,
So
you're missing it. Now he's
uh,
after trillionaires. I'm just
right
kidding.
now, yeah, now he's just going after billionaires. Oh, the
There you go.
billionaires, he's not going after the millionaires anymore. But even more importantly, the entire country has just seen the economic damage done by the policies of the Biden administration, which Bernie essentially wrote.
How do you write an economic policy when you've never worked? I don't think the great Dr. Lop can even answer that one.
Well,
That might be on
that's
an SAT
yeah, that's
question. There you go.
I think that's a very zen question. Like if a
There you
tree
go.
falls in the forest, does
I
it make
like
it
that.
and no one hears it?
So McConnich, I'm butchering his name. I like him. He's a CNN, one of the few good CNN hosts, maybe the only one. He's on Saturday. And looking at the political landscape, he believes, for whatever it's worth, and like your comment, that he believes that it's not going to be either Biden or Trump. What say you?
He may be right. I mean, at this point, it really is too early to
Way
tell.
too early.
I hope he's right. I would like both Biden and Trump to go
Goodbye.
away.
Check, please. Yes. Goodbye.
And quite frankly, according to polls, the majority of Americans agree with me that they want both of them to go away. I would love to see. I don't know who I would put up on the Republican side, but RFK Jr. seems to be the only viable candidate on the Democratic
You know
side
what's really
so
sad
far.
about RFK? First of all, he's not going to be able to have the light of day in the mainstream
Yes,
media. And you know something? I think he would win in a landslide, maybe nationally. I've looked more into his policies. He's the old Democratic Party, what you've always talked about, Dr. Lopkin.
he
But
is. He
isn't it sad that because he is that, the Democratic Party of 40 years ago, he has no place in the modern day Democratic Party. In fact, I have a liberal friend who watches MSNBC. They've already marginalized him by calling him a vaccine kook.
Yeah, he's not a vaccine kook. Um, yes, he was against vaccine mandates, which, you know what?
He was
That's fine.
correct on
He
Genius.
was, yes, he was right. Look at the damage that all these mandates did. He is very centrist. And that right now is absolutely unacceptable within the Democratic Party. You can't be a centrist.
You will be
You
chewed up and spit out. How does that sound?
Exactly. He is the Democrat in the mold of his father and his uncle. And
That wouldn't
realistically, that's what the Democratic Party needs to come back to reality.
100% AOC, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren. By the way, about Elizabeth Warren, you know that she has a double deficit lead. Sorry, she's behind digits to Charles Baker, the ex governor Republican of Massachusetts. Has she worn out her welcome?
I think
By the
they're
way, she
all
lied because she said she was never going to run for the presidency. So essentially, she was just using the good people of Massachusetts for her own benefit as she reached for a beer and announced her candidacy. But what do you? I think double digits. That's pretty out there. I think she's kind of
double
has.
digits is up there. That's an uphill battle for her. And I think
Can
she
she
has
finally be
fallen
put to rest?
Yeah, she has fallen out of favor as Bernie Sanders has fallen out of favor, as AOC has been falling out of favor, because people are starting to realize that they don't know what they're talking about. They are extremists. Biden keeps yelling about the extreme ultra MAGA. And I'm not a big fan of the extreme right, but the extreme left is just as dangerous.
They're both
We
mirror images of each other and both equally scary. It's,
And
depending on what day it is,
what's
who's
really
scarier is up
amazing,
for debate.
and Dana Perino on Fox News was talking about this a while back. It's like your political identity is a circle, and now the extreme right and the extreme left are actually meeting at the back of that circle.
I like that. Excellent. I did talk about Samanich. Samanich. I'm always butchering his name. I love him though. Sorry about that. And he is from CNN. But what do you think of the fact that I can't believe this, but it is true that reported on several news agencies that CNN, which is you have to try to do this. This is, as Casey Stengel would say, a team effort. Now drops below Newsmax. Anderson Cooper is below 450,000 viewers. Your comments, Dr. Lopkin?
When you lie to your viewers over and over again, you lose the viewers. The only reason that CNN exists now is because they did have a strong history at one point.
At one time, yes.
And there are people that say it can come back to that, but not unless they do a major overhaul. They need to get rid of everybody at that network and
Everyone.
rebuild from the ground up.
But why do they
You-
continue to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic? They need, I agree with you, all of them. Again, this is not a political, ideological argument. It maybe comes in a little bit, comes into that. But you go tune in to CNN prime time. I'd rather watch. Remember, you're from New York. The Yule log during Christmas is
yes, I do
seriously more
remember the Yule
entertaining.
log. CNN is having a problem reorganizing because there are still enough people ingrained in the media that are saying it needs to remain a liberal bastion. And we're seeing this not just as at CNN. We talked about this last week that Vice Media just declared bankruptcy.
Yes, now it's
Well,
official.
they declared bankruptcy on Monday. They are trying to arrange for a sale of it rather than letting it fall by the wayside. Why are they trying to sell it? Because they need the liberal biased media so that they can sort of point to each other and go, well, they said this also, so obviously it must be true. Who's trying so hard to make sure there's a sale of Vice Media? Soros Capital.
Yikes. Another big media event and political event is the Durham Report. Not looking too favorable on Obama and Biden, linked to crooked Hillary. In on it from the get go, pretty much.
Yeah,
And by the
if
way,
you go
Biden's the best salesperson ever. He can look you in the eye. He looks like such an honest guy. And yes, he is as crooked as they come.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you dig into the Durham report, it doesn't really say anything we didn't already know. The DOJ and FBI have been weaponized. Biden
Because
and
of
Obama,
Obama, by the way,
yes,
he started it.
yes, because of the Obama administration. And Biden and Obama knew that Hillary was putting forth this fake narrative of Russian collusion, and they were fine with it. What's really sad about the report is that it doesn't actually hold anybody accountable.
Well, personally, for whatever it's worth, I find it disgusting because presidents, ex presidents, what they always had in common, no matter what side of the fence they were on, they were pro American. To drag the country through that kind of agony, to the geopolitical ramifications are also very, very concerning. To do that shows Obama's true stripes. I'm sorry, that's just how it is.
Oh, yes. Both Obama and Biden have destroyed the U.S. reputation around the world. Now, Biden is actually trying to destroy the United States with overregulation. And I love, he's now decided we need to get rid of gas stoves. Now, there's no science behind anything that he's claiming with his energy policy, and Joe Manchin just shut him down, saying we're not even going to bring your nominee to the floor unless you stop
Now let's
this
talk about
bullshit.
Joe Manchin. There's talk about him may or may not running for the president. I think this is a side issue. Could he flip? Is he so pissed because he got you know what?
I don't think he's going to flip.
I
I
don't think
think
so
I
either.
think he will
Will he be a
remain a
nemesis?
Democrat. I do think he is now the Democrats' biggest hurdle. He is the speed bump that's going to keep the Democrats from pushing forward on more of their ridiculous ideas because he is pissed. And I don't think at this point it has anything to do with him getting reelected. I think it's all about you lied to me, you played me for a fool, now you're going to see the repercussions.
That's it. And he's like, you never mess with a mama bear and her cubs. I think that's you draw the analogy that you messed with his political future. Now he's pissed.
That's it. And you're seeing we mentioned what was going on at CNN. Anderson Cooper had defended CNN for having the Trump town hall, and liberals just ripped him apart. So you're actually seeing the left turn on each other and just try to devour each other. There was a group just the other day of moderate Democrats that had a meeting with with McCarthy about the debt ceiling, and they told him if he can come to a deal on the debt ceiling and the extreme right threatens to remove him as Speaker of the House, they will defend him. They will side with him and give him the votes he needs to stay as Speaker of the House. So you're starting to see tears in all of these ridiculous alliances with the extreme right and left.
I think that's only good for America. Um, Speaking of America and what's good for America, as we close out this segment of Carnivore Bites, Bud, Budweiser, Bud Light, always part of America. Maybe not such a big part anymore, down 20% still in sales. And now they're going to launch a camouflage Bud Light aluminum bottles campaign. Your thoughts? I think sometimes for me, I'll just put my little thoughts in first. Sometimes it's better just to shut up and let the storm pass. What do you think?
Sometimes that is best. In this case, they're doing everything they can except the one thing that they need to do. They need to apologize to their consumers. That is what their consumers are waiting for. They've said this on social media and they have made excuses. They have poo pooed it, saying, oh, it was just a one time thing we did. It wasn't a full campaign. They need to come out and say, we apologize to our consumers for taking them for granted and not taking into consideration how they feel about what our brand stands for.
And you know something? Why don't they? Okay, why is it that people high up at Budweiser, Anheuser Busch, whatever, that's a a basically makes is the only sensible argument. Why aren't they getting it? Flailing all these nonsensical promotions, bringing back the Clyde. Just be honest. We kind of screwed up. Maybe make a funny campaign out of it. Famous screw ups in history. Boom, 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 and then have the Bud Light thing. Just do so. Don't try to make pretend that it doesn't happen. That it didn't happen. He didn't f up.
The playbook for this was written back in the 80s by Tylenol when
Yes.
there was the Tylenol scare because the capsules had been tampered with. Tylenol came out, they pulled everything off the shelf. They said, we are taking responsibility for this. Do not take the medication. And then they redid their packaging and the capsules to make sure that couldn't happen
And
again.
get so much positive press from it, it actually
Right.
increased their sales.
Right. All Bud had to do was say, "We made a mistake. We apologize for offending people." And the thing is, if this had gone the other way, if this had been a pro America campaign that had offended the far left, they wouldn't have hesitated to apologize
Well
because the
done.
the far left right now has something working for them that the far right doesn't, and that's fear. They're terrified that the far left are going to make a stink because, let's face it, yes, Bud Light lost 20% of their sales, and that's going to hit them hard. But if you watch the mainstream media is still saying, "Oh, this was no big deal. It's an overreaction." If it had happened the other way, if it was something that had offended the trans community, the mainstream media would have ripped them a new one.
Well done, as always. Dr. Lopkin, this concludes another edition of Carnivore Bites. And unlike CNN, we are not the Titanic, are we?
No,
The deck chairs do not have to be rearranged, do they?
our listenership is still growing, and of course, you can catch every episode of Xvadio of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin, and thank our listeners.
We'll see you next time.